All right, good morning, E-Huddle. Glad to be here with you, and I want to take the next little bit of time and try to spend some time looking at some of the demographics, some of the sociology, and what's going on behind the scenes across the North American division, so we can look and have an honest assessment, a heart-to-heart of what's happening, so that as we're doing evangelism, as we're strategizing, thinking a lot about these different things, we can have some of the latest demographics and trends so we know what's going on. So let's jump right in. One of the biggest things impacting Christianity and Adventism, believe it or not, is fertility rates. Back in the 70s and 80s, people were worried about there being some kind of global population explosion around the world. There just would be too many people. And now all the demographics are pointing to the opposite. In fact, when I have been teaching students, I tell my students, we need you to have more kids. We need more sex is what we need, with obviously, within certain constraints there. But we need more people. And sustaining population, 2.1 children is the demographic. And many developed countries around the world are not having enough children. So this is leading to some very interesting questions. As Philip Jenkins is arguing in his book, I encourage you to check this out. But fertility and fertility trends is compelling the major religions of the world to develop new approaches to sexuality, to gender, and how the people view the family. So, and significantly, that there is a significant correlation with increased secularization. So we're seeing this happening around the world, all around the world. In fact, places where they thought maybe in what's called the global south, that we're seeing these same kinds of trends. And so Adventism is not immune to this. Christianity is not immune to this. So we have to take a hard look at what is going on around us. By the way, Jenkins says at the end of his book, two of the major concerns of the church in the future will be the church that learns how to empower women. Okay, are you listening here? The churches that learn how to empower women, as well as dealing with this topic of environment, okay? And that's actually a big concern for a new generation wondering what's going on into the future. Can I actually bring children into this world? Will it be safe for another generation? What's going to go on? Okay, so that's a big part of what's going on. So let's look at some of these other trends that are happening around us. This should not be a surprise to those of you who are here, but we're now seeing this research that points from the Pew research that there's an increasing number of people who are affiliating as none when it comes to these religious demographic surveys, like the U.S. Religion Survey and so on. Well, what does that mean? Well, first of all, I'll tell you what it doesn't mean. And that is that it doesn't mean that people are becoming less religious. In fact, the U.S. Religion Survey, which I have the privilege to help support and be a part of that research group, they're actually pointing that the same number of people over the last 10 years are still attending religious services. So we're not seeing a decline in religion, but rather a suspicion of organized religion. Do you hear what I'm saying? So what we're seeing is people that are really having questions about where is organized religion, and these questions about voluntary associations, the typical traditional way that people have affiliated and come together in some kind of official kind of capacity. So a suspicion of organized religion. One other thing that we're noticing is also a trend from some of these patterns of immigration that are happening. If we didn't have immigration, we would not have some of the churches and the church membership sustaining what it is today. And we have from high context countries, Western countries, and people coming in from low context countries. And this is creating some of these questions, patterns that we are observing going on. And so we have to recognize and realize what these are and how this is impacting our churches as those patterns of immigration change how our membership profile, as well as the people that we're trying to attract to the church. Now let's look at some of this breakdown of religion and how people see religion in society. First of all, we're seeing that there is a significant decrease in traditional Protestant Christianity. And by the way, this isn't just the mainline churches, but in the last 5 years, we're even seeing some of the more traditional conservative churches. There's been a kind of a misnomer that it's the more liberal churches that are declining. But that's not true. It's all traditional churches, including the Southern Baptist and more conservative denominations. So it's really not an issue of liberal conservative, but one of organized religion altogether. Here's another one of these. This is from the U.S. Religion Survey. We see that there's an increasing breakdown. And again, I want you to notice something very significant here. And that is that we're not seeing the people that if you're going to be doing outreach or not, you cannot expect them that they're going to be Christian and think the same way that you do. You're going to have to start thinking in new ways about people that are either completely secular or come with a very different worldview or different set of religious assumptions. That's one of the things I want you to notice in these demographic patterns that we're seeing. Well, here's one more thing I want you to notice. We also see this breaking down in terms of generationally. And this is where we see the rise of the nuns that I was just telling you about. We see increasing numbers of those in the younger generation. So I think this is a pattern that's not going to go away, but we're going to see this only increasing over time, especially the millennials and Gen Z increasingly suspicious of organized religion. Again, it doesn't mean they're not spiritual. In fact, we see very high patterns of religiosity, of spirituality, just not attachment to organized religion. So that's one of the things I want you to see. Now let's look at some of the Seventh-day Adventist demographics we're seeing from these larger patterns and what can we learn from them. First of all, I want you to notice, now this is a little bit of an older survey from 10 years ago, came out from Pew, breaking down the demographics. You can see Caucasians or whites, 37%. Blacks or African Americans, about 32%. First thing I want you to know is I'm certain that pattern, that demographic is not accurate anymore. In the last 10 years, those numbers have declined. It's probably, it's hard to say for sure, but it's probably somewhere closer to about maybe in the 20 to 25% range. Again, we're still trying to figure that out. And the Hispanic percentage has certainly increased. Possibly, I was talking to Jose about this just the other day, maybe 25, maybe even upwards of 30%. Again, changing demographics. And we also see quite a few other immigrants from just other parts of the world all over. We're seeing an increasingly diverse church in North America. And in many ways, that is a very good thing. We need to acknowledge and be thankful for that. But we also acknowledge that things are changing. But now I want you to notice this statistic. This is something that should startle every person in this room. And this is the latest research we have. This is from a World Church Survey that included extensive research within the North American division. And this is the number of people that we lose, the percentage of people that we lose for every 10 people that we bring into the church as new believers, we lose a little over 4. 4 out of 10. What does that tell you? Well, first of all, I think this should wake us up that not only do we need to do evangelism, but we need to work on discipleship and retention. You can do all of this wonderful work for evangelism, but if we don't take the time, we just lose them out the back door. And so whatever we do at eHuddle and anywhere else, I think we need to take stock and really have serious conversations. How are we going to not only bring these people in, but nurture them and make sure that we can take this statistic and reduce that percentage? It's only been increasing with every research study we do. That number continues to go up. We need to have that trend go the opposite way. Well, where are people coming from that become Seventh-day Adventists? This should be something very interesting for all of you here at eHuddle thinking about church planting and evangelism. And I want you to notice something on the screen. They come from everywhere. Sometimes people are asking me, does public evangelism work? Yes, it does. Does friendship evangelism work? Yes, it does. And you can go through and look at all of that. There are many different ways that we're doing evangelism. These trends will continue to change, but we need to keep trying everything to share Jesus with other people. And this is a good research statistic that we have, thanks to the church ministries and Peter Sinchala at Andrews at the seminary and David Trim at the GC Archives. We're seeing this research that backs up this data. Again, here, where are we finding people before they become Adventists? This is of interest, again, to this group here. You see 28% were raised Adventist. You have some that have no religious affiliation at all. And then others are make up the rest of this statistic here. Then I want you to notice something else here. Here's some of the other rankings, again, supporting some of this. You see, once again, over 21%, almost 22% people that were raised in the church. But then you have lots of other ways that people meet Jesus through the Seventh-day Adventist Church. And here, influence of other parents or other relatives. You have the influence of friends, almost 13%. Here you have personal Bible study. That's how my family became Adventist, was just a neighborhood Bible study. In fact, I only went to trade baseball cards and play street hockey. And then one day it was raining and I went inside. And that's how I met Jesus Christ for the first time in our family, which had been very secular, became Christians. We became Seventh-day Adventists as a result of simply having a neighborhood Bible study. Now let's talk and break down just a little bit in the few minutes I have left here. What does this mean for the local church? And I want to look at some trends, some patterns here. There are some larger research studies, and I encourage you to check that out. Follow us on our social media with the Archive Statistics and Research at the North American Division. We're trying to and we're also creating a new newsletter, so you can sign up and get once a month the latest trends and demographics there. But this question, I pulled it out of the survey. I wanted you to see it for a specific reason, and that is for the first time we have a significant pattern. 10% of people of our church membership in North America say that they only connect to their church online. That means that digital evangelism is going to be essential to the future and health of our church here in North America. Now, I know you're talking about this in other presentations throughout eHuddle, but I want you to, this is actually serious research data. If you want to have growing, thriving churches, you need to have a serious online presence. 10%, that's a significant statistical data that's only, I believe, going to grow in the future. Another couple interesting survey statistics here. You see the breakdown of, this is in North America, of some of the data of where we find people attending church both in person versus those who only attend Sabbath school in person, and then those who are basically only connecting to your churches online. You need to know, where are those people? How often are they coming? If you want that data, this is the latest research data we have from just the past 2 years. This is very significant. And again, we need to notice that, yes, after COVID, post-COVID, we're seeing people returning to churches, but once again, a significant online presence. You have people that are only attending church online, finding out who they are and what's going on. It doesn't mean, by the way, it doesn't mean that people aren't committed to the church. In this research, latest and most comprehensive research study that we have for North America, we find that almost 3/4 of members envision themselves as lifelong Seventh-day Adventists, still committed to this church, but again, we're seeing these patterns, these demographics that are changing. Now, I want to take a moment and pause and look at some of we've done a world church survey, including North America, of people that are looking at what do they actually believe. Now, I want you to notice this. Almost 3/4 of church members that we surveyed this is specifically in North America, they believe in the sanctuary doctrine. If you ask them, do you believe in the sanctuary, Christ's ministry, and the heavenly sanctuary in heaven? And people would say, yes, of course, 3/4. Now, I want you to see this bottom question. In order to receive God's grace, I must first live by his rules. Well, you see something, and you see quite a few actually do disagree with that, and that's actually significant. That's important. But now look at this slide. The reason that I do good works is because I have been saved by grace. And suddenly you see quite a few people who actually disagree with that. And there seems to be some kind of cognitive dissonance. On the one hand, we can say we're saved by Jesus, but then there seems to be a significant number of people who think that somehow by keeping the Sabbath or being vegetarian or whatever it is, that this helps in some way contribute to earning their some salvation, helping them to become better before God. This is important that we recognize. And what does this mean? Well, it means that we're probably doing pretty good in terms of our theology, teaching some basic beliefs such as the sanctuary and the Sabbath, but maybe perhaps we also need to do a better job at presenting Jesus Christ at the center of what we believe. So let's take stock of this. If we're losing 4 out of 10 church members, retention, not only do we need to develop strategies, but we need to focus on Christ-centered messages and discipleship that will point and lead them to Jesus. Some takeaways here as I wrap up. Global birth rates are falling, and indicative of increased secularization and significant shifts in religiosity. The church of the future will be a church that will deal with different kinds of issues in different ways. LGBTQ. Young people are asking, what is the church's stance on this? Is my church relevant to my friends who maybe identify in the LGBTQ community? Or climate change. You know, if the world's going to be changing, will it be safe if I have children in the future? Is it possible? I've met so many young people say, well, I just don't want to bring children into this world. And the roles of women, as women become increasingly educated, are we going to, and historically the Christian church has been made up of women, but are we going to empower them in the future to continue to lead the church? Or are we going to restrict them? The church of the future, as Jenkins, I mentioned earlier, will be the church that finds out or figures out how to empower women. Secondly, the rise of the nuns shows us that people are increasingly skeptical of organized religion, traditional institutions. Religious landscapes are more diverse than ever before as we look at traditional mainline denominations that are in decline. Population shifts around the world are shifting from those ones that identify with low self-expression to ones of high self-expression. We need to figure out how to get along as we have increasing shifts in demographics from around the world, how it is to be a world church. Then third, the religious landscape is increasingly more diverse than ever before as we look at these traditional denominations in decline. Excuse me, I just said that. Number 4, the Seventh Adventist Church has been able to largely maintain its growth through, despite significant attrition. You know, when I go to these other demographic survey groups like the U.S. Religion Census and others, they look at me and I'm kind of a little bit nervous because maybe our growth rates aren't as high as what we'd like to see, although we have had this last year one of the highest growth rates in the North American division that we've had in some 10 years. I saw that celebrated yesterday here at eHuddle. We can praise the Lord for that. I have people from other denominations that are in my job, and they're like, what are you guys doing? What are you guys doing? And so we can celebrate that, but we can do better. And we need to work on discipleship and retention. And then last, my penultimate point, 10% of churchgoers are at least only connecting with your churches online. And so there is no magic bullet to evangelism, but whatever it is moving forward, we need to make sure that we have a significant digital presence. That is absolutely essential. And then last but not least, it is vital to explain not only Adventist beliefs and lifestyle, but we need to explain what does it mean to be a Christian, a follower of Jesus. And as we have a growing number of church members who are wondering, what does it mean to be a Seventh-day Adventist? Thanks for listening to me. I look forward to our conversation, energizing conversations as we continue through the rest of our day here at eHuddle.